Hello and thank you for joining me for a city tour downtown Kassel. My name is Gerhard Mekefer from Team Mekis Audio Tours, and I will try to make your tour here today as interesting and enjoyable as possible. Brüderkirche is the oldest monument of the High Gothic period in Kassel. The brothers of the Order of Mount Carmel were called to Kassel by the then-in-charge Landgrave in 1263 in order to erect a monastery close to the royal court. As far as I know, said Landgrave was Hermann I of Thuringia. In 1292, the friars began the construction of a church. In 1331, the choir was completed, the Langhaus was done in 1376. The friars of the Order of Mount Carmel were and still are mendicants. Their strict disposition is reflected within their church buildings. Brüderkirche does not feature any elements of wealth and luxury. When the monastery was dissolved in course of the Reformation in 1526, it became a parish church of Kassel's old town. After its destruction in 1943, Brüderkirche was rebuilt according to its original designs between 1952 and 1956. Up to 1970, sermons took place regularly in the Great Hall. Today, only the chapter house is used for Mass. It is used by the Greek Orthodox parish of Kassel. Apart from that, the church building is also home to expositions and cultural and societal events. Today, Brüderkirche is administered by a foundation. Oh, by the way, you may find the church building a little short. Well, you are right. Originally, it featured one extra bay, but when Landgrave Philip had the castle fortification built in 1526, the church building had to be trimmed by one bay. The former castle of Kassel stood just at the position of today's regional authority building, the white complex to your right. You are now positioned at the so-called Renthof. Even though Renthof normally is used for a square that is surrounded by buildings, in this case the entire complex of buildings behind the church is called Renthof. The Renthof is one of the oldest still inhabited buildings of Kassel. After the partly demolition in World War II, the Renthof was reconstructed as home for retired people. This functionality it has till 2012. Currently, spring 2017, the Renthof will be renovated and shall be used as hotel and restaurant. The Renaissance portal on the left, which is the entrance to the former retirement home, displays the double emblem of Landgrave Moritz and his second wife Juliane, Countess of Nassau. It bears the data 1617. In the yard of the former retirement home, you can find an Apollo well, which was built around the year 1600. The building complex running parallel to the river Fulda on the right of the square was built as Wilhelm IV's Kanzlei in the 16th century and had been called Rentamt. This building also featured gorgeous voluted gables. However, it has not been the term Rentamt that became popular for the complex of the buildings, but the term Renthof. Like many other ancient buildings of Kassel, the ones at Renthof also became victims of destruction. And even though many of the outer walls still were intact, some buildings were torn down in course of the rebuilding of Renthof in 1959. Today, only a few of the old buildings are still to be found. The already mentioned Renaissance portal, Apollo's well, and the archway in the rear part of the court. All the other outwalls are replicas, as for example at the Markthalle. The buildings here are the remains of the monastery of the Order of Mount Carmel, built in the 13th century. The monastery, that was built at the same time than Brüderkirche, had served as a royal school for a long time. Its most famous pupil was Heinrich Schütz, 1585 to 1672. He entered the school in 1599 as a choir boy and became the organist of Kassel's court chapel from 1612 to 1617 before he moved to the royal court of Dresden. In 1595, the royal school was turned into a knight academy, the so-called Collegium Adelphicum Mauritanium. Young royals were taught dialectic, rhetoric, physics and more. Between 1633 and 1653, the University of Kassel had been located here. Wilhelm IV had it installed because the University of Marburg fell to the Kingdom of Hessen-Darmstadt in course of inheritance disputes. But as it had been the time of the 30 Years' War, which lasted from 1618 to 1648, the university never really blossomed. Even in the best years, the number of 100 matriculated students was not reached. The worst year of the university was 1640, when the number of students fell to 2. After 20 years, the university was absorbed in 1653 by the University of Marburg again. If you are positioned at the bank of the river Fulda now, you will find one of the few remains of the city fortifications of 1767 right behind you. As I already mentioned at the beginning of our tour, Landgrave Friedrich II had the old city fortifications of 1277 removed between 1767 and 1774. What remained are Druselturm, Zwerenturm and the impressive turret right behind you. Its walls are almost 10 meters strong. The turret, called Rondell, is the last of originally 3 equal fortifications. The eastern turret, that reaches to the river Fulda, and the wall leading along the river are the last remaining parts of the old castle fortification. In the basement of the tower you can find a cupola with crenels and a powder chamber. There are also still intact parts of an underground vestibule leading to the former castle. It is supposed that there were inquisitional trials in the basement of the torrent, along with the usual range of instruments for torture. Among others, it is supposed that an Iron Maiden was located here. How this instrument of torture worked was described by the literary scholar Paul Zonert from Kassel in the 1920s. An Iron Maiden is a larger-than-life-sized machine that is shaped like a human and has blades along its arms. The machine could be opened and the condemned was embraced by the machine and dissected by the blades. And below the machine a channel flushed the corpse into the river Fulda. So far the horrible story of the torrent. However, the torturing had stopped a long time ago. Quite the contrary, today you can find an open-air pub on top of the Rondell during summertime nowadays, where you can enjoy the view on the river. Within the walls of the building, the so-called Zisselrat, Zissel Council, held its meeting in the 1930s. Said council was an assembly of local businessmen and municipal administration staff that organized the folk festival Zissel, which is Kassel's biggest fun fair. Since 1925, it has annually taken place on the first weekend of August and lasts for 3 days. During the time of Zissel, the so-called Zissel Queen, the Zissel Princess, and the Mermaid of the river Fulda take over control of the city. Highlight of the folk festival is a festive procession that takes place on Sunday on the river Fulda. Richly decorated boats pass the spectators along the river. But where is the connection between Zissel and the Rondell? Well, at the beginning of each Zissel festival, the emblem of the Zissel, a herring, is hanged at the top of the torrent. Said emblem is a larger-than-life artificial herring. The festival is opened with a saying in the local dialect, roughly translated as, "Here is the herring, let's hang it up," similar to the famous O zapft is at the beginning of Oktoberfest at Munich. At the end of the Zissel festivities, the herring is removed with another saying in the local dialect, translated as, "Let's get down the herring, now swim through the seas and tell everybody that the next Zissel is going to start in 361 days here in Kassel." But there's another saying that is defining Zissel, which cannot really be translated. Fulle Wasser, hoi, hoi, hoi. Roughly translated, water of river Fulda, hoi, hoi, hoi. You may wonder where the name Zissel stems from. Unfortunately, that is not really clear. Many linguists tried, but nobody came up with a solution so far. You should now be positioned just in front of the Kassel well. That is the official name of the well from the 1950s. Above the bassin that is surrounded by sandstone, you can discover a stylized herring, the symbol of the Kassel, as we have just heard. The crossing where we are positioned at the moment is called Altmarkt. From early medieval times up to the beginning of the 19th century, it was the epicenter of the city life here in Kassel. It had been the center of the three districts Old Town, Unterneustadt, Lower Newtown, and Freiheit, Freedom. Old Town, Altstadt in German, is the area behind us around Brüderkirche and Royal Stable. The district Unterneustadt is the one on the opposite bank of the river Fulda. At the end of the 13th century, this district had actually been founded as the New Town area, but with the installment of the Upper New Town, Oberneustadt at Friedrichsplatz, the district on the opposite bank received the name Lower New Town, Unterneustadt. The district Freiheit, Freedom, had been a part of the city that was founded by Landgrave Heinrich II in 1330 and is spread along the slope leading from the Bell to the city center at Untere Königsstraße, Lower King Street. The border between Old Town and Freiheit is a small street leading into the city center starting at the Bell here. It is called Die Freiheit, which therefore makes quite some sense. Altmarkt, as you may guess from the name, was a place for markets. The old town hall of Kassel also had been located here from 1408 to 1837. It actually had been positioned just around our current position. By the way, the first bridge above the river Fulda had been built in the 13th century because a connection between the newly found Lower New Town and the Old Town became necessary. Before that, there only had been a fort. Because of the growth of the city during the 19th century, the city center more and more moved into the direction of Königsplatz, and Altmarkt moved to the outer skirts of the city. In the course of the bombings during World War II, Kassel's old town, as I had already mentioned, was completely destroyed, and there is nothing left of the former densely built houses. What you can see today are mainly functional buildings from the 1950s and 1960s. What is new is the building on the opposite side of the square. It is home to the Finance Authority of Hessen. Up to 2005, there had been an administration building from the 1950s, the former police headquarters.